Time for Money, Power, Politics. This year, the country's Social Security Trust Fund is going to shrink for the first time since the 1980s. And while this might sound like a boring budget concern that's not really our problem, it is absolutely our problem. Here's why. If nothing is done, it is projected that Social Security reserve funds, do not fall asleep, are going to run out by 2034. Retirees could receive 25% less than what they've been promised. And don't forget this, 15 million elderly Americans rely on Social Security, and they could fall below the poverty line, i.e., this is our problem. So, former national director for the National Economic Council, i.e., the president's economist, Gary Cohn, and former North Dakota Senator Heidi Heitkamp decided to ask the next generation for a fix in the form of a competition. Gary joined us last month to tell us about the competition, and now he is back. Welcome, Gary, with the winners from the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, Roy Liu and Anthony Pasco. Gary, again, thank you for doing this. I got to go to the winners first. Roy, lay out your solution.
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much for having us on the show. We also would like to give a shout out to the other 4 members on the team that couldn't be here today. But to answer your question, we came up with what's called a 3C bundle solution. And so there are 3 main pillars that all start with C. First, it's around cultivating contributions. What we're trying to do here is eliminate the payroll tax cap, but at the same time, lower the payroll tax rate so that it creates a tax cut for 95% of Americans. The second bundle is called the controlling costs. And to do that, we want to go more towards indexes. For example, indexing the retirement age and also indexing the cost of living adjustment. And our third C is around compounding capital, which talks about diversifying the Social Security Trust Fund to more high-yielding assets beyond just Treasury bonds. We project that the 3C bundle solution, when done together, will eliminate 159% of Social Security's 75-year funding shortfall so that we can basically fund other programs as well with this surplus.
All right. Complicated, sophisticated, and brilliant. That's the opposite of what the government does. So tell me, Gary, why you like this, why this was the winner, and why you think something like this could actually happen.
Well, Steph, when we came in before to talk to you about this, Senator Heitkamp and I talked about how we would choose the winner. We said we would choose a winner based on a solution that was mathematically sound, one that made sense, but most importantly, one that was politically doable. What Anthony and Roy have come up with is that they've come up with something that's mathematically sound, which we know, but it's very politically doable. If you listen to what Roy said and what Anthony had worked on, they're basically cutting the taxes. So 95% of Americans...
We love that. We love a tax cut.
95% of Americans will actually pay less into the Social Security system. So that's got to be a winner there. So the top 5% of earners will pay more because they're removing the cap on where you pay Social Security, and they're including more income in the Social Security payout. Then on the flip side, they're saying, look, the elderly are falling below the poverty line. So we're going to re-index how we pay out to the elderly. We're going to go to something called CPIE, which is really how elderly spend their money, and they're going to give the elderly more money. So if you really take this solution down to its core principle, it's basically broaden the base, lower the rate, and pay out more to the people that need it to stay above the poverty line.
Anthony, what actually happens next? You presented to Congress. They gave you a booming round of applause. But is this going to get any real traction? Has there been any more follow-up rather than, bravo, you smart young guys, glad you came down to Washington?
Definitely. There's definitely going to be a lot of follow-up. The number one thing that we're going to do is working closely with the Ways and Means Committee in Congress.
Really? That is legit.
So Stephanie, there was a bipartisan meeting of the Ways and Means Committee where these gentlemen presented, and there was unanimous appeal in there to the committee on what these gentlemen had suggested. We had the Democratic leadership with the Republican leadership, the former leadership in the room together, listening to what they proposed. They said this is a very interesting solution.
Do you think young people are going to start to buy into how important it is to address Social Security? When we try to talk entitlement reform, we tried to do this on college campuses a few years ago. Nobody even wanted to show up. But it is your generation's problem.
Right. I definitely think that young people today have skin in the game in terms of Social Security. If we just think about the millennial generation, more of them are living with their parents longer. They're working in the gig economy. What they are going to need when they retire in the future is something like Social Security. They're not going to have as many pensions as we had before. They might not have home equity because housing prices are so high. So because it's a problem that affects us now and will affect us moving forward, a lot of young people are really interested.
I know you're optimistic, but do you really think Congress is going to work on this, take this idea?
I think so, because as Gary said, it's a bipartisan solution. Many of the other solutions that have been presented in front of Congress.
I was going to tell you, there's a lot of bipartisan ideas.
Right.
Yes.
Right. But the thing is, in the past, a lot of the other solutions that were presented very much tilted towards one side of the political aisle, whereas this one has a couple of things that both sides of the aisle really like, and doing that, I think, will increase its political appeal.
Yeah,
Gentlemen,
and
yes.
to add on top of that, Stephanie, so earlier Gary and Roy both were able to talk to you about how we changed the formula to CPIE. One thing that hasn't been done in a number of resolutions, we've seen CPIE in 5 resolutions in the House. One thing that hasn't been done is a tax cut for 95% of Americans, while also increasing the benefits for Social Security. So we think we can please both sides of the aisle with our proposal.
I mean, I love it. Left, right, center, 2 smart guys, and Gary's here. Gary is sticking around. Gentlemen, Anthony, Roy, congratulations on winning. And I'm going to say thank you. Imagine that, a possible Social Security solution.